Hey guys, welcome back to the Brick House. Brick the Rock Johnson here with another Pokemon tier list. So you might notice that there are already Pokemon placed on the screen right now, and those are just the ones from last week that haven't moved up or down any positions. And so also before we start, I do want to give a shout out to Dodrio and Galarian Rapidash. If I was making this video any earlier, before the emergency patch notes with the amulet coin, these would definitely be the must plays of the week. Sadly, that only lasted for about a day. So anyways, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give a like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So let's start with the attackers. And last week I had Alolan Ninetales as our solid pick attacker. And honestly, I don't think Alolan Ninetales has been doing too good lately. The meta has shifted entirely towards a all-rounder focused metagame, and Pokemon that don't have too much range are really suffering right now. And Alolan Ninetales really does require having a good defensive peel to actually get anything done, and with all-rounders able to just kind of shred the defender and then shred the attacker after. It's a Pokemon that just definitely suffers a lot right now. So I'm going to be moving Alolan Ninetales down to the not bad tier. Right in front of Glaceon, who's a similar Pokemon, but definitely been doing a bit better lately. But we'll see what happens with Glaceon for next week. So next in the attackers, we have Inteleon, who has been a Pokemon that's actually been surprising me a lot lately. And ever since the release of the Choice Scarf, Inteleon has been doing even better than before. Being able to get a couple attacks off and then retreat to reactivate your passive to get a couple more snipe shots is so clutch in team fights, and especially during the Rayquaza rips. And it's definitely a Pokemon who's been moving up from the not bad and has gone all the way up to the top of the solid pick tier, right under Alolan Raichu, who is a Pokemon who has still remained banned a lot. And being said, it actually did prevent it from being the must play and keeping Dragapult at the must play tier. So Dragapult, just like Inteleon, is a Pokemon that goes invisible and has benefited so much with these Choice Scarf buffs. And Dragapult's unique with the Phantom Force stacks that he's actually able to get around the map probably the quickest out of any of the attackers, aside from Raichu. So being a very mobile attacker in this meta right now is extremely important. And it's also why Pokemon like Miraidon move up to the solid pick tier, and honestly pretty high up, right under Inteleon in fact. The mobility, the range is just so impactful. And again, it's not that Greninja's doing any worse, it's just the benefits that Miraidon has in this current metagame is so impactful. So for the last two attackers, we got Cramorant and Duraludon, and we're actually going to have Cramorant finally moving out of the last place tier for the first time, replacing it with Duraludon. So Cramorant's a Pokemon who, in my opinion, gets a much better boost utilizing Choice Scarf than Duraludon. Duraludon is a much more stationary Pokemon than Cramorant, and with the movement speed buff with the Choice Scarf, Cramorant's actually going to be able to utilize it with like the dive set, for instance. So moving on to all-rounders, we have Dragonite, who is actually going to be moving up to the top of the solid pick tier. Dragonite is honestly performing so well right now. And I can say that Dragonair might be the best second stage Pokemon out of all the 3-stage Pokemon in the game right now. When it comes to getting the Altarias at that 7-minute mark, Dragonair is definitely one of the last Pokemon I want to run into in that situation. So following that, we have Tinkaton, who's going to be moving down from the solid pick, down from the not bad, and actually all the way into the maybe don't play tier. Honestly, kind of edging out Dark Fist Urshifu, which, as I always say, why would you play that when Water Style exists? But Tinkaton is a Pokemon that doesn't really go well in a lot of team comps, in the terms that you have to farm for a large portion of the game, and Pokemon that have to rely on a very specific mechanic don't tend to do well in a solo queue game when you have 4 random people to play with. Um, a lot of players will get angry. They might start trolling the team. They might leave the game, or they might even not understand like what you're doing, so they don't know how to position properly, which puts a lot of offensive pressure on the goal zones, which often leads to like a game where you want to surrender at the 5 minute mark. So Tinkaton, and for those purposes, albeit a very good Pokemon, just not the best Pokemon in a solo queue game. So that leaves us with 2 all-rounders left, and I'm gonna actually be putting Buzzwole down from the solid pick tier and actually somewhat low in the not bad tier. So Buzzwole was a Pokemon that had a lot of hype attached to it ever since it got those Leech Life buffs, and honestly, it hasn't actually lived up much to the promises. So if we're looking at the win-loss data for the last week, you'll see that Buzzwole actually dropped to under 50% and actually had a 48% win rate. And it's kind of interesting too, because he still remains in the top 5 banned Pokemon in the game, but in the bottom 10 for win rate in the game. That really just says like it's not really a good pick. A lot of Pokemon, it has a lot of players playing the Pokemon, but they're not winning most of their games with the Pokemon. It actually is, odds are you're gonna lose with this Pokemon. So we'll see how Pokemon Unite looks at that data, and see if they actually buff the Pokemon in the future. And that does leave Blaziken as their last Pokemon, and remaining in the must play for this week. Pokemon has just been doing even better since the Choice Scarf was introduced. Just the fact that you can play Blaziken in so many different ways. Whether you want to be like attack speed, whether you want to do full offense, critical, even tank. If your team needs someone to be a little bit tankier, Blaziken is able to fill all of those roles, and it really just comes down to how well can you play this Pokemon. So moving on to the Speedsters, we're actually gonna have Gengar moving down to the last place for this week. Honestly, it's not too bad of a pick. It's just definitely not performing as well as the other ones. Zeraora was the Pokemon last week in the last place, was moving up to the maybe don't play, just under Zoroark. They still have the same problem of not being able to sway the game enough, not being able to close out a game. They can get ahead early, fairly easily, but when it comes to getting that win, getting the Rayquaza, they're a very obvious target for that last fight, and that can actually be a huge detriment for your team. So that does leave us to the last 2, and we'll have actually Meowscarada moving down from last week, right beside to the solid pick tier, right beside Darkrai. So Meowscarada is definitely a very good speedster, but Talonflame is in a very good position ever since the extra movement speed items were introduced, and there's been a lot more Talonflames running Brave Bird recently who have been able to completely wipe teams, and it's going to be interesting to see how the player base adapts to this playstyle, or if Pokemon Unite ends up nerfing Brave Bird in the future. It's definitely the best Pokemon of the week, and this is even despite the Amulet Coin nerf. Moving on, we're going to have Ho-Oh actually moving up to the solid pick tier, right beside Umbreon. Ho-Oh is an interesting Pokemon because it's largely depends on how well you can use your Unite move. Having good, awareness of the time, knowing which teammates to revive, and it's honestly not actually too uncommon for team fights to break out in this meta. And in team fights, a lot of your teammates actually end up fainting next to each other, which is just perfect for a multi revive from Ho-Oh. So Ho-Oh's definitely a Pokemon that has been sneaking up in the ranks recently. And two Pokemon that have actually dropped from the solid pick are Lapras and Snorlax. The balancing act of having damage and having tankiness. They've acquired the right battle items as well as the right emblems, which is a very specific set just to be able to be tanky enough while dealing enough damage. Much like Greedent, it's very hard to convey to your team that you're not going to be as tanky as they think you're going to be. So they might be a Pokemon that actually might end up costing a game in the long run. That does leave Blastoise as our de facto must-play defender for this week, just like the last few weeks. It's just a Pokemon with so much built-in CC that really does outshine Pokemon like Trevenant and Mamoswine without even needing to go into any like offensive sets. You can go fully defensive and still end up doing lots and lots of damage to the other team. To round off, we have the supports, and we're gonna have Hoopa moving down from the not bad to the actually maybe don't play tier. It's a Pokemon that is, again, very good in the 5-man setting, but when it comes to coordinating randoms, to use your portals, to get like, you know, the berries maybe that you might, the citrus berries you leave for them, and just to understand all of the Hoopa mechanics, it's not easy. Also moving down a tier is Eldegoss, and they're actually going to be moving down to the last place for this week. Eldegoss is a Pokemon that has been kind of power crept over the last couple of releases. There's other supports that can heal more, other supports that can give more shielding, and Eldegoss is definitely in need of some buffs, I believe. Mostly just, you know, maybe some more shields, because it just seems like there's a huge difference between a Pokemon like Blissey and a Pokemon like Eldegoss in this current meta. So moving on, we have Clefable moving down as well. I had Clefable actually in my must play for my last week, and that was due to the new buffs it got, the new adjustments to its to all of its stats, and it looked very promising on the surface, but ended up being a bit underwhelming, I'd say. It still has a little bit more to be desired. I feel like it could be a little bit tankier, and like moves like Gravity could probably actually deal with like a little bit of a lower cooldown. It's a bit punishing still to use Gravity, for instance, and not get anything out of it. It's very easy to counterplay around that still. So that leaves us with two more supporters, and we'll have Sableye actually moving up from last place to the not bad tier, and honestly I think still better than Clefable right now. Sableye is a Pokemon that really benefited from that amulet coin. Sadly, it did get nerfed fairly quickly, but it is still a pretty good option on Sableye, and all this extra movement speed options give these Pokemon that backdoor a easier chance to get back to the team and help with the team fight as well. So yeah, Sableye can become less of like this backdooring support and more to like a backdooring support that can actually join in on the team fights, especially when it matters. And that does leave our last position, Blissey, to be our must play for this week. Some of this does have to do with the fact that Psyduck does hover around a 33% ban rate right now, and that does mean that in 1 in 3 of your games, Psyduck will be the Pokemon ban, which isn't really good for anyone who's looking to like pick up a new support main right now. So Blissey is sitting at a pretty comfortable, I think it's hovering around 10%, so pretty comfortable ban percentage, pretty average for most Pokemon in the game. It's definitely not a Pokemon that should be underestimated with this Unite move. This is like the kind of Pokemon that can either help your carry survive a lot of attacks it would otherwise faint to, or even just boost the attacker or all-rounder to even stronger levels where they can just start melting the team. So Blissey's versatility definitely makes it the must-play for this week. Anyways, that is the tier list for this week. So a couple Pokemon moved up, a couple Pokemon moved down. Let me know in the comments if you agreed with these decisions, if you disagreed. Do you think maybe some Pokemon are placed too high? I'd love to hear your opinion. But anyways, I have been Brik the Rock Johnson, and I hope you guys have a good day. You smell what the brick is cooking?